Yesterday, one of Ben Shapiro's little toadies online told me that I was gravely misinterpreting Trump. I was being extremely unfair when I stated that Donald Trump was clearly demanding loyalty on behalf of a foreign state. He was demanding that Americans pledge their loyalty to a foreign country, Israel, because that's what he did. Trump and his advisors have apparently determined that it would be great political strategy for them to focus monomaniacally on Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, AOC, and the rest of that little gang. And so they've converted that into a level of pandering, pro-Israel pandering, that almost comes across as comical. So yesterday, Trump was on camera and said that any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat shows a great disloyalty, quote unquote, if you vote for a Democrat, if you're Jewish. Now, disloyalty to what? I saw all kinds of, apologists convoluting rationalizations about how, maybe Trump just meant loyalty to oneself as a Jew, or he might have meant loyalty to Judaism as a religious tradition, blah, blah, blah. No, what he meant was Israel, and that was obvious because Trump, in that original statement, invoked, quote, the state of Israel. So it's not as if you have to be a super brilliant reader of context clues to understand the meaning there. But you had, the Ben Shapiro brigade saying that, how dare you misinterpret this statement from Trump? He couldn't have possibly meant what you're claiming he meant. Well, Trump came out again today and said, quote, if you vote for a Democrat, you're being disloyal to Jewish people and you're being very disloyal to Israel. End of story. So there's Trump, the supreme nationalist hero of America, who self-proclaims to be a, quote, nationalist, and has hastened the revitalization of nationalist philosophy almost. A lot of people now describe themselves as nationalists because they took cues from Trump beginning in the 2016 campaign and up until the present, where Trump said, maybe I'm a conservative, maybe not, I don't really care, but I want to put America first, therefore I'm a nationalist of some type. Well, hard to square a fidelity to American nationalism with repeated demands that Americans pledge their loyalty to a foreign state. And that's what Trump is doing over and over again. He's saying that American citizens are betraying some solemn duty if they take certain political action, which in his warped mind implies disloyalty to Israel. Now, the crazy part of this is, and Trump surely knows this on some level, that he is in essence accusing the vast majority of Jewish Americans of being disloyal to Jewish people and to the state of Israel because they vote Democratic. Supermajorities of Jewish voters vote for Democrats in the U.S. They voted for Barack Obama by huge margins, even though there was a concerted effort all throughout the Obama presidency to paint him as some kind of rabid anti-Israel zealot, even though he wasn't. He basically gave Israel everything they wanted, whether it was military aid, diplomatic cover, except for a few minor tinkerings around the edges, mostly that came later on in his presidency, actually within the literal waning hours of the presidency, such as when the U.S. abstained from a UN vote having to do with Israel in December of 2016. But that's all to say, Republicans have tried to call into question why Jewish Americans would vote for Democrats for a long time, because they would claim that Democrats are somehow hostile to Israel, even though almost, I would say, probably 95% of elected Democrats in the country are overwhelmingly favorable to Israel to the point of being obsequious. So they latch on now to this handful of new representatives who've taken a different line, namely Tlaib and Omar, although they're not alone. I mean, there are others like Representative McCollum in Minnesota, who I think valiantly has been a harsh critic of Israel on totally legitimate grounds for a while, but they dwell on these two representatives where Trump first last week demanded that Israel bar them from entering the country. Now, remember, the U.S. spends taxpayer dollars allocated by Congress, billions of dollars a year in military aid to Israel, which in part allows Israel to continue its decades-long occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. So, U.S. taxpayers are on the hook for that. That money is allocated by Congress, and therefore it falls squarely within the remit of any member of Congress to travel to Israel/Palestine and investigate how that money is being spent. And in order to truly investigate that issue, you'd have to go to Palestine, namely the West Bank/Gaza. And that's what Omar and Tlaib were intending on doing. But Trump said, hey, Benjamin Netanyahu, my big buddy, prohibit these members of Congress from entering the country because you don't like their political speech. Remember, we're always told that Israel is this glorious beacon of democracy. It stands up for liberal values and, is an oasis in the terrible desert of the Middle East. Barring foreign legislators from your country purely on the grounds of their political speech is the antithesis of liberalism classically understood. So you can't, on the one hand, proclaim how wonderfully liberal and tolerant and inclusive Israel is, and then on the other, cheer when they exclude foreign legislators who are giving them money purely on the grounds that you don't like what they say politically. So Trump is now on another one of his rants, and he's tweeting quotes about how he's the king of Israel. I mean, this is getting stupid at biblical proportions, literally. Trump is far from alone in pandering on Israel, but when he panders on the issue of Israel, it almost comes across as just more of a joke than ever, which in the long run may actually diminish support for Israel in the U.S. If it becomes to be associated with this clownish, laughable hyperbole, then you're going to have a lot of people rescinding their support of Israel because they associate it with Trump. Netanyahu has already amped up the partisan tensions around Israel in the U.S. And in the long run, this is sort of very much contrary to Israel's interests. That's why you see a lot of American Jewish organizations objecting to how Trump is approaching this issue, including AIPAC. Because AIPAC's whole philosophy is that we have to maintain a bipartisan support of Israel at all costs. Israel should not be a partisan issue, AIPAC says. And Trump is turning into something of a partisan issue. That's why liberal Zionists are out of their minds paranoid about this development. Because they think once support in the Democratic Party for Israel recedes, you're never going to get that back. Or it's not foreseeable how you'd get that support back. But on Trump in particular, the irony could not be more blaringly obvious here, because notwithstanding how he and his supporters love to posture as nationalists, notwithstanding how nationalism was supposedly reinvigorated under Trump, Trump is obsessed with furthering the interests, as he sees it, not of the United States, but of Israel. Obviously, he purports to further the interests of the U.S. in other instances, but it's not compatible with any recognizable notion of nationalism to be badgering American citizens, including millions and millions of people, to pledge their loyalty to a foreign state. Now, whether that constitutes anti-Semitism, I don't quite buy into that necessarily. I think it's just Trump kind of lazily riffing about these things that he doesn't know a whole lot about, frankly. So he phrases these injunctions in a way that you could argue has some resemblance to the way anti-Semitic tropes are often constructed, having to do with dual loyalty and that kind of thing. But I don't know that anti-Semitism is really the right frame to view Trump's statements. It's simply just boorish bluster, and it's frankly idiotic. Not just because it's politically dubious as a strategy. I mean, are that many Americans now going to run to Trump's side and vote for Republicans because they are succumbing to his demands to pledge loyalty to Israel? I don't think that's really what Trump's quote-unquote base is most fired up about. You might have some like aging retirees in, the Palm Beach area who are excited about Trump's statements and maybe more likely to vote for him, but not a critical mass of voters, I wouldn't think. I mean, Israel just really is not at the top of mind for enough people for that to move the needle electorally for Trump. But on a more fundamental level, it just totally obliterates what is supposed to be Trump's core philosophical approach to the American presidency, that he's going to be a nationalist and put America first. On the contrary, he keeps demanding that a country other than Israel be what Americans pledge their loyalty to. And you just cannot reconcile that with any form of nationalism. So people who consider themselves nationalists might like a thing that Trump says here and there, but at a very basic level, it's just totally incoherent and ought not to be taken seriously at this point. Talk to you later.